Welcome to CharityVillage Connects. I'm Mary Barrell. For years now, particularly following the pandemic, we've seen many nonprofit professionals report feelings of burnout, stress, and depression, which are only increasing as falling donations and increasing demands for services continue during challenging economic times for Canadians. In this episode of Charity Village Connects, we wanted to dive into the latest research on the well-being or lack thereof of nonprofit workers and seek out advice from experts to provide nonprofit leaders with the data, research, and potential solutions they need to improve their workplaces and address the issues impacting the mental health and well-being of their workers. To help us get an understanding of the key issues and potential solutions, please welcome Akela Peoples, CEO of Mental Health Research Canada. She holds a master's degree in education and executive leadership certificates from Harvard University, Western University's Ivey School of Business, and the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management. A values-driven, impact-focused leader, Akela has twice been awarded the WXN Top 100, Canada's Most Powerful Women Award, as well as the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, the YWCA Award of Distinction, and the Paul Harris Award from Rotary International. Welcome to the podcast, Akela.
Thank you so much for having me today, Mary. Really appreciate it.
Well, what does your most recent data tell us about the current state of well-being and burnout among nonprofit workers in Canada, particularly frontline staff? Are there any trends that have surprised you?
Well, thank you for that question. I look forward to a great discussion today. I would like to say that we're very pleased to see a focus on well-being in the nonprofit sector. It's a largely underexplored topic, and I think we need to be talking about this more and more as we move forward. The Future of Good recently put out a report on the mental health of this workforce, and we're in the last stages of releasing our own report as well. Most of the overall factors that we track at Mental Health Research Canada were actually surprisingly similar between the nonprofit sector, government, and private workforce. But the methodologies of our report and Future of Good report is a little bit different, and often methodologies can lead to different results at different times. Our extensive ongoing national data uses clinical screeners, GAD-7 and PHQ-9, and we've been collecting data since April 2020, very early into the pandemic, on many things related to mental health. And we're reporting about every 8 weeks through the pandemic and now quarterly, and we continue this work. So while the increased strain in this workforce is not yet reflected in the standard clinical screeners that we collect, we do acknowledge the sector is strained. It's being asked to do more with less than ever before. And of course, we all know that this sector relies a lot on fundraising, and that can put pressure on organizations and can trickle down to staff. We do see evidence that they are beginning to struggle as a workforce. We're seeing slightly increased reporting on depression, as well as not coping well with stress, as well as the impact of mental health on the ability to function. So these are preliminary findings, but they're not statistically significant yet on our data collection. But I also do want to mention that every type of employment has pros and cons. And elements that charge your battery and elements that drain your battery. And in the nonprofit workforce, of course, there are more issues with often lower compensation, emotional trauma for frontline staff, as you've mentioned. But there are also protective factors as well for this workforce, like connection to their work. I've worked in this sector for a number of decades now. I love this sector, and people in this sector are often very connected to their work. They're very emotionally invested in their work, and for the most part, they enjoy their work. And these elements can actually protect their mental well-being.
That's very interesting. But I can see the connection in that, I guess the positive reinforcing of the idea of making impact can really sort of, I guess, overcome potentially feelings of depression or being burnt out. Could you highlight one or two key findings from your latest reports that nonprofit leaders and funders really need to understand right now?
Hmm. Well, I'll speak in general terms. Our report hasn't been released yet specifically on this topic, but it is soon to come. But because we've been reporting on mental health for such a long time now nationally, we found that in relation to the workplace, that instead of reporting in blanket statements that generalize about a workforce, we find it more useful to consider specific things that impact workplace mental health positively or negatively. And this allows employers and leaders to be able to adapt and employ strategies that will help to support their particular team or their particular workforce. So in the nonprofit sector, the connection to work that I've alluded to a few minutes ago is very powerful. It's a great protective factor. And I think leaders should make sure that as they're leading, that they are realizing that this is a really powerful force in this sector, so that they should seek to deepen this connection for their employees, because it will help in the long run. And of course, being able to provide feedback and engage in more meaningful ways can be very helpful. And I think that leaders, if they think and lead with these things in mind, they will find that they will be supporting the mental health of their team members.
Are there particular segments of the workforce by sector, role, or demographic that are experiencing significantly higher stress or mental health risks based on your data? What might this mean for the nonprofit sector workers?
Great question. Well, we are seeing young people in general across the country are suffering more with their mental health than any other demographic and more than ever before. And there are a lot of young people employed in the charitable and nonprofit sector. So this is a demographic of particular interest. And also the LGBTQ community also has been at risk for a long time in terms of mental health and wellness. So anyone leading in an organization that has these two demographics on their staff team, they should lead with that in mind. And also lead with a focus on avoiding trauma where possible in the workplace. And there are many jobs with frontline staff where trauma is unavoidable. And so leaders should make sure that they're paying special attention to that, to make sure that employees are getting the help that they need, perhaps even if they don't need, yet know that they need it. So these are really important things on a leader's desk to create and cultivate cultures that are supportive of mental well-being.
And in your view, what are some of the underlying systemic issues in the nonprofit sector that contribute to poor worker well being and burnout? What are the structural factors that we need to address?
Well, I think lower pay and job security, no surprise, is a big issue. And this is a challenge across this whole sector. Resources are always difficult to find, and that shows up in terms of income and et cetera, et cetera. So that's definitely something that is key. Emotional burnout is something I think we need to be careful about and mindful of. As I've mentioned, workers in this sector can be very emotionally invested in their work. And, it's sometimes hard, again, having been in the sector for a long time, to leave work at work and come home without carrying the emotions attached to your work. So emotional burnout is something that I think is a challenge. And I'm going to go back to leadership again, which, you've heard from me a couple of times. I think leaders in this sector, some of them may have more control over the kind of cultures that they're creating, even if it's a culture they have inherited, that they have probably more control over evolving that culture with workplace wellness in mind than perhaps maybe some of us think. So I would really like to encourage leaders to think about that. What kind of culture do you have in your business? How are you evolving it with workplace wellness in mind? How are you supporting your employees? This is no longer something that should just be in HR. This is something that forward-looking leaders need to lead with a square focus on their desk of workplace wellness, because you want your employees to bring their best selves to work. And that's not always possible. We're all human. We carry a lot of emotions and challenges with us that come from other areas of our life, and we bring them to work with us, whether we want to or not. And I think if leaders can lead with more empathy, with more flexibility, and to be very mindful of the kind of culture that they're nurturing and growing, I think this will pay off in dividends.
Well, you mentioned the Changemaker Wellbeing Index, and I wanted to sort of return and dive into some of the results that they found to get your comments on that. The 2025 Changemaker Wellbeing Index found a third of nonprofit workers they surveyed are food insecure. And when they looked at frontline workers, that number went up to 50%. How do realities such as this, along with things like job precarity, funding instability, emotional labor, and experiences of discrimination, affect the mental health of frontline nonprofit workers that you've seen in your research?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. We do have extensive data on food insecurity. We've been collecting data on that for quite some time, since middle of the pandemic. So this is something that we've been paying a lot of attention to, and it's definitely tied to mental health. It absolutely is. Our data reveals that. Interestingly, in our data, food insecurity is not significantly higher in the nonprofit sector compared to the for-profit sector in general terms. It's about a third, and that's similar in the other sectors. The Changemaker and Wellbeing Index is a little bit different to our work, as I understand it, and my team tells me they dive deep into the nonprofit sector, where our work is broad and comparative across different sectors. And again, it doesn't mean that it's contradictory. It just means results may show up at different times because of the methodology. Food insecurity has increased in the last several years, post-pandemic. And while the rate of food insecurity has improved in the last 6 months, it still remains higher than pre-COVID. So this is something that we all need to be paying attention to in society. You know, it's difficult to bring your best self to work if you're worried about what food is going to be on the table for your family. So this is definitely something that all of us and leaders and policymakers and whatnot need to be paying, close attention to.
Yeah, it's really distressing to think that people in full-time jobs can actually report being food insecure, whether they're in the nonprofit or the for-profit sector.
Right.
It's saying something
Absolutely.
very important about the state of our economy and our cost of living. What practical
It
steps?
absolutely does.
Yes. So, what practical steps can nonprofit organizations and leadership take to better support the well-being of their team in the short term and also in the long term?
So I'll start again with leadership, because I really do think there's a lot of power there, with the leader's focus. I really believe that well-being has to be a key strategic focus. You want your people to be, as healthy as possible, emotionally, physically, and I think leaders have a lot of opportunity to shape their cultures, as I've mentioned, in a way that will be really helpful. Making sure good policy is something we're paying attention to, and that starts with making sure that you're doing everything you can to support your employees from a policy perspective wherever is possible. Broaden your sick days as an example to include mental health days. That's not something that happens in every organization. Sounds like a fairly simple thing to do, but that's something. Taking a look at your policies and seeing where you can insert more mental health supports into your policies. For those roles where there's psychological hazards that are unavoidable, make sure that you're giving employees a time to recover and really help them to develop coping strategies if you know that your employees are in a role where they are exposed to trauma and they may need help. So being preventative, I think, can also be very helpful in that regard. If I could mention a couple of initiatives that we've started at Mental Health Research Canada as an example. I don't know about you, Mary, but the pandemic changed me as a leader. I became tremendously more flexible. There's no doubt about it. And when we went to remote working, our organization grew during the pandemic. So my colleagues worked harder than ever before and were highly productive despite all of the challenges in COVID. So when the workplace opened up again, we stayed hybrid. because my employees said they loved not being in traffic. They loved being able to better manage and integrate their personal lives and family lives with work. And so this is something I've been watching every 6 months. Just 2 weeks ago, I decided to close our office full time at the end of July. So we are going to be 100% remote, and our employees are very, very happy about that. We've also implemented a flexible day where employees are able to start and end at different times. Some start at 7 a.m. and end at 3, others 8 to 4, others 9 to 5, just depending on when they bring their best self to their desk and what works best for them and their families. Um, the hybrid and remote working, of course, that doesn't work for everybody, but for some organizations, perhaps a hybrid model would work. We also have a work from afar policy too, where I've had a number of employees work. They've had to go see family or attend family functions or take care of relatives. They can work from afar for a certain period of time. We also have time off without pay with no worry of your job disappearing. And First of its kind in Canada, as far as I know, in the charitable sector, we implemented a 3-week paid sabbatical, we call it, after every 5 years of service. And I have one colleague right now in Europe with his family for 3 weeks on top of his paid vacation because he's served 5 years. And we felt that was a great way every 5 years to reward our team for excellent work and commitment and contribution. And lastly, on occasion, I give bonus days off. Just passed a long weekend that was on a Tuesday, and I gave everybody the Monday off as well. And some of these are easy things to do that can really support wellness in the workforce, help employees feel appreciated and rewarded for good work. So I think leaders can be creative, even beyond formal benefits plans and things like that that cost money. I think that there are levers that we have that can help our employees feel supported and feel like their mental well-being and balance is a priority in the organization.
Well, we can certainly relate to the remote work experience at Charity Village. We've always been remote, and we are having our 30th anniversary this year. So, you can be productive in that way, it's a it also we have really good retention as well of our employees. So I can't we might be statistically supporting your your position over at your organization as well. But I'm curious about mental health supports, which, although they can exist externally with benefits programs, for example, you just mentioned some, but also they can be available internally within an organization, especially if the organization is taking a proactive approach to promoting good worker well-being. What are your thoughts on the balance between these two approaches? What do nonprofit leaders need to understand about both to better support their staff?
Mm-hmm. And this is a challenging one because benefits are expensive. And the not-for-profit sector is often very strapped for resources, and some benefits plans are fully employer paid, some are co-paid. But I know this is a struggle across the sector. And as small organizations, many charities in this country are small and nonprofit organizations. But as they grow, I would really like to encourage leaders and boards of directors to still aspire to having benefits at some time. I know I've led in other charities before where we were smaller, and we implemented self-managed benefit plans where an employee would get X number of dollars a year to put towards health supports in lieu of a benefit plan. So there are creative ways from a leadership perspective that if you're not large enough to have benefit plans or employee assistance programs, that there can be things that can be implemented. I would also suggest that if an organization, a nonprofit or charity doesn't have an HR committee, I know this is something that's benefited us tremendously. We had an HR committee, and that sabbatical idea that I just shared with you came out of our HR committee. I never would have thought of that, and I thought it was a brilliant idea to reward, hard work over a long period of time. So having a board HR committee where you can have some HR professionals around the table to come up with creative solutions that you can implement internally if you don't have benefit plans, I think that these things are worth considering and exploring as well. And again, we're back to leadership. Get to know your employees and the kind of work they're doing, because it is, again, it's hard to generalize across the nonprofit sector because every nonprofit is so different and the work is so different, but what is right for your employees? What do they need? What work are they doing? Where might their mental health and wellness be at risk? And what can you do as a leader and with your leadership team to try to support them in creative ways that will pay off dividends?
Well, I'm curious for individual nonprofit workers, especially those in the front lines, what personal strategies or supports do you recommend for maintaining well being and resilience that are grounded in what your research shows actually helps? Like, what personal kind of practices or um, I guess supportive kind of things can a worker do to make their well-being more resilient?
So this research goes back into the early days of the pandemic when we were on lockdown, socially isolated. So we started looking into this quite some time ago, and it's showing consistently even now that simple activities like being outside, fresh air, taking a walk, experiencing nature. If you're an animal lover, be around animals. All of these things can have positive impacts on your mental health and wellness. Our research also shows that engaging socially, and of course, during the pandemic, this was a challenge because we were isolated. But this research carries through now that if people have good social supports and social networks and they spend time with family and good friends, this can really support their mental well being as well. And being part of any community. So, whether you're a member of your church or you join the local community baseball team, or your neighborhood network or whatever it is, that's also a good strategy. And lastly, I do want to underscore being mindful of and decreasing, if you can, your social screen time, not your work related screen time, because we can't do much about that. And actually, that does not correlate towards poor mental health, but high social screen time, and we're seeing this especially in the youth demographic, really correlates towards poor mental health. So those are a number of strategies each and every one of us can do at any time to support our mental well-being. I think lastly, I'd like to say, consciously make it a priority. Especially sitting at home, you're working remotely, I'm working remotely. Make sure you take a break, get up and walk around, go outside just for a breath of fresh air. If you're consciously focused on every day supporting your mental health and wellness, get into those good habits that will become part of your daily routine, and you will end up coming to work being more refreshed each day. So all of those things I think any of us can do at any time.
And do you recommend any resources, whether from MHRC or other organizations, that you would suggest nonprofit workers explore to support mental health in the sector?
Yes, great question. Again, I know the nonprofit sector is always challenged in terms of financial resources, but there's a great organization, a nonprofit organization called Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. A quick Google will take you to their website, and they have a vast array of only free resources on that website, and they're all accredited, evidence-based resources that any leader and any nonprofit or charity can go on there, or even in the not in the for-profit sector, honestly, not just the not-for-profit sector. Workplace Strategies for Mental Health, they have all kinds of resources, easily downloadable, and with next to no resources, the next day you can be implementing some strategies that can support your your employees' mental health and well-being. Also, opening minds, if a particular charity or nonprofit has some resources to spend on this. They are an organization that was created by the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and they've trained millions of people in workforces across the country on things like mental health first aid and the working mind, which are accredited programs. So two options there: free resources and resources if you have some financial support to be able to put towards mental health and well-being.
Those are really great resources. Thanks for bringing it to the attention of our listeners, Akela. Finally, looking forward, how do you think the nonprofit sector as a whole needs to evolve to prioritize and sustain worker well-being at a structural level? What gives you hope?
A number of things come to mind here, Mary. First is not just in this sector, but everywhere in every workforce and also in our communities in Canada wide. We need to increase mental health literacy in this country. All of us sit on a spectrum where on one side of that spectrum, we are at optimal mental health. And at the other end of the spectrum is a diagnosed mental illness. And we all sit somewhere on that spectrum at any given time. And that can change from day to day and week to week and month to month. And if we can increase our literacy and our personal knowledge around how to differentiate between normal life or job stress and stress that is getting in the way of our ability to function, either in our life or our job. The latter is where we need to start to think about getting some help and support because many people wait far too long to get help and support. When if they got help and support a little bit earlier along that spectrum, again, if they had the literacy and the knowledge and could determine between, okay, this is just stress, stress is a part of life, I'm going to get over this, in the next few days when this project is over. If we increase that mental health literacy, people will be better equipped to know when they need help, and we will all be better off for that, and our workplaces will be better off for that. Also, reducing stigma. We've come some way forward with this, and I think it was one gift the pandemic gave us is that we all experienced what it was like to feel the pressure of our mental health during the pandemic. So we are now talking about mental health more, and that's a very good thing, but we have a long way to go. We all talk about going to the gym or going to a yoga class, but we don't talk about our mental health in the same way. We've no trouble talking about our physical health, but we all must commit to working on our mental health and being conscious of our mental health. So I think committing to decreasing stigma, and that means bringing mental health into conversations around your dinner table, in your network with your friends, in workplaces. Make it okay to talk about it. Let's realize this is a part of our overall health. Our mental health is. So let's talk about it more. And then I'll go back to leadership. I think making sure that leaders are caring and empathetic. You can still have a good business mind and be focused on the bottom line and focused on high quality work, and you can still be caring and empathetic. And I think that's something that we all need to focus on. Realize people are struggling today more than ever before. And sometimes it's the people you least expect. So we all have to approach our work and our life and our relationships with empathy and with caring. And I honestly don't think, in the nonprofit sector, any board would balk at all at any leader coming to the board and saying, we need to prioritize mental well-being in our organization. We're doing a good job, but we can do a better job. So I think that making sure leaders are focusing on this. In terms of what gives me hope, we're here talking about this today. So the fact that we're talking about mental health more and more gives me a lot of hope. It's a big step in the right direction. If you think about a theory of change, this is a business school entity, but if you think about a theory of change, you first have to change individuals. And then because organizations are made up of individuals, then slowly organizations are going to start to change. And then the longer game is systems are made up of organizations. And as organizations start to change, the whole system will start to change. So all of us need to focus on this. And if we all do our little part in our circles of influence, in our families, in our communities, and at work and as leaders, and talk about mental health, be mindful of mental health, role model good mental health and balance, I really think we're moving in the right direction, but we have a very long way to go.
Well, Akela, that was such a treasure trove of wisdom and advice. At Charity Village Connects, we definitely appreciate your incredible insights into the well-being of some of Canada's most crucial workers that make up the sector and our society in general. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and advice for nonprofit leaders across Canada seeking to make meaningful improvements in the working conditions for the change-making professionals in their organizations. Thank you for joining Charity Village Connects.
And thank you, Mary, for all the work that you do and all the work that you lead at Charity Village. It's a wonderful organization. I know you're very focused on lifting the sector. So thank you for the opportunity.